Hi, my name is Nicole. Welcome to my channel, Travel to Money. In this video, I want to talk about differences I've seen between Portugal and Spain for those who are considering a spot to land as a digital nomad or for retirement. In recent years, Portugal has become a hotspot for digital nomads. Spain has always been a vacation destination, especially for Europeans. But what country is right for you? Maybe both. If you are new here, I have created this channel to help you learn about how to travel, adventure, and have fun on the road to financial independence. I have traveled the world, I own a couple of houses in Spain, and I'm on a creative journey to financial independence. I believe the road to financial freedom can and should be fun. I hope you'll subscribe and join me on this journey no matter where you are starting from. Portugal and Spain make up the Iberian Peninsula, are both home to incredible cultures, and are two of the most affordable places to live in Western Europe. I chose to buy a house in Spain, but if you have been debating between these two countries, I'd like to offer some advice on some of the differences that I've noticed. This is not a competition. Both countries are amazing and you'd be lucky to live in either one. But everyone is different, and maybe you will be more suited for long-term stays in one over the other. Let me start by first offering some similarities. Both Portugal and Spain are known for seafood dishes. If you are a seafood lover, you will find fresh seafood along the coast of either country. Both Portugal and Spain have relational cultures that are steeped in tradition and each have a slower pace to life than what we are used to in the US, which I think is a positive. Both cultures also value nature, and you'll find that being thoughtful about the use of natural resources like water and not being wasteful with resources like food is common among both. I don't think I realized how wasteful and spoiled I can be until I'm confronted with the reality that other people face not only economically, but with how we take care of the planet. I'll give you an example. In the US, you might run a hot bath or you might have a shower. It isn't uncommon, especially for a woman who may be washing and conditioning her hair, plus shaving her legs in the shower, to take a 15-minute shower or longer. In the US, we may not even think twice about the water. You might consider your electric or water bill, but even that isn't considered by most. On my Instagram page not long ago, I asked the question, should I put a bathtub or shower in the house I'm renovating in Spain? One of the most common responses I got was to put in a shower because it saves water, and water is a limited resource in Spain. I had to scratch my head. In my mind, a shower would use more water than a bath because a bath takes 5 or so minutes to run, but a shower could just go on and on. Then I remembered that it is a common practice in both Portugal and Spain, and probably a lot of other places in the world, to shower only running water intermittently. For example, you may get in and rinse off your body, but then you would turn off the water while you take a washcloth and wash your body with soap. Then you turn the shower back on to rinse. This saves both water as well as the gas or electricity it takes to heat the water. But it's not only to save money. It's like it's considered your communal responsibility to save water, which is something else I've noticed about Portugal and Spain. In the US, we are so individualistic, but in those two countries, there is much more accountability and respect for a person's responsibility to their community. And it's a wonderful lesson to learn, but it is different than what you might be used to. Now let's talk about some of the differences between Portugal and Spain. One of the more obvious differences is the language. In Spain, the language spoken throughout the country is Spanish. However, each region of the country has its own official language as well. In Portugal, Portuguese is the primary language. Now, I personally think that Spanish is much easier to learn than Portuguese, which has a lot of those throat sounds that we aren't used to using in the US. However, in Portugal, you would only need to worry about learning one language. Now, don't get me wrong, in Spain, you would be just fine learning only Spanish, but if you ever wanted to be like the locals, you may also want to pick up a regional language. Speaking of language, where can you get around easier in English? Personally, I would give this one to Portugal. In either country, the further you get away from the big cities, the less English will be spoken by locals. Honestly, thank God for Google Translate. But after being in Spain, where you will generally be addressed in Spanish, even in the big cities, when I went to Porto recently, I was shocked when I was addressed by nearly every person in English. It's like they saw me coming a mile away and would say, "Hello." Now, I'm a big believer that when you go to another country, you should try your best to communicate in their language. It is not the responsibility of every other culture to learn English for you, but it is a convenience and a privilege for you when it is spoken so widely. I will say that Porto was a melting pot, though, and I could see how English would be a common language used a lot in a diverse city. So, diversity is one that I would also give to Portugal. Again, speaking mostly of the large cities, I don't really consider Spain to be all that diverse. Please feel free to comment if I am wrong. But when I was in a city like Valencia, I mostly saw Spanish people. However, when I went to Porto, there was a huge amount of diversity everywhere. It almost reminded me of being in Orlando or New York. Now let's talk about differences in affordability. Personally, I think when it comes to buying a coffee, a beer, or a bit of food, Portugal comes in at slightly less expensive than Spain, though both are very inexpensive. But not everything is less expensive in Portugal. Gas was more expensive, and if you haven't paid for gas in Europe, get ready. Thanks to the war, the prices are far more expensive than what we pay in the US. It would cost me nearly €100 to fill up my little Honda CRV. Now, for housing affordability, for me, I found cheaper houses to purchase in Spain, but that is specific to the Valencia area. Housing prices vary across both countries. Rent and utilities are going to be pretty similar and affordable in either country. Portugal has been in a bit of a housing crisis recently, in part due to so many people wanting to move there in recent years or taking advantage of the golden visa in order to get access to the rest of Europe. Portugal has been one of the easier countries to get a visa in, but some of that is changing in order to stabilize the housing market for the locals. A lot of investors were buying up properties to meet the golden visa requirements, but they weren't even using the houses most of the year, and with short-term vacation rentals becoming a thing, many foreigners who could afford it were creating their Airbnb businesses in Portugal. But this has been to the detriment of the Portuguese people who live on an average wage of just €2,600 per month. And I believe a lot of people in the country live on much less than that. I am not one to point the finger at short-term rental investors because having short-term rentals has given me great opportunity, but I do see how it is one part of a problem that many countries and local governments are having to address, which is why Portugal recently announced a freeze on the Golden Visa program, and the city of Porto has put a freeze on short-term rental licenses, which Lisbon also did back in 2018. They need to make housing affordable for locals. However, Portugal hasn't stopped all visas. They still have the new visa that is often called the digital nomad visa. I think these are generally attracting visitors who will spend money in Portugal, but not necessarily try to make money on Portugal. Now, Spain is opening new opportunities for digital nomads, just this year introducing a digital nomad visa as well. And Spain still has their version of the golden visa, though the barrier to entry is a higher dollar amount. In recent years, it has been easier to become a resident of Portugal than of Spain, but I think that might be about to change, and it's all based on what is best for each country at each time. I'm sure it will ebb and flow for each country over the years. Now, here is something to know about options for living long-term in both countries. In both Spain and Portugal, it is legal to purchase property, but that doesn't make you a resident. This means you can only spend 90 days at a time in the Schengen area of Europe, which includes both Spain and Portugal. So you couldn't go to a home in Spain for 90 days and then a home in Portugal for 90 days because your 90 days are counted throughout the entire Schengen area. Now, if you're attempting to become a resident of either country through a digital nomad or any other kind of visa, it's important to note that whichever country you obtain residency in, you are required to be in that country for over 180 days per year. Now, that's great if you're actually wanting to live there most of the year, but if you think it just gives you access to all of Europe, keep in mind the requirements to be present. It's not like residency with your home country. For example, I'm a resident in the US, but I can travel outside of the US the whole year and it wouldn't change my residency. The only visa in Portugal that has been different is the Golden Visa, which lets you become a resident after investing a very large amount in real estate. With this visa, you are only required to be in the country for 7 days out of the year. Under Spain's Golden Visa program, there are no minimum stay requirements, but if you want a pathway to citizenship, you have to be in the country over 6 months out of the year. With Spain's digital nomad visa, if you want to keep it for more than the first initial year, you will need to be in Spain for at least 6 months each year, and you can renew for up to 5 years. One other thing I thought of is that I do find it a bit easier to get around in Spain than in Portugal when driving. Spain really invests a lot in the roads. Both countries have excellent public transportation options like the metro, bus lines, and you can use services like Uber in each as well. Whenever you travel to Europe, you will notice that smoking is much more common and social than it is in the US. Even though a lot of people still smoke in the US, it's definitely discouraged and not widely accepted in public any longer. You will see smoking is very common in both Portugal and Spain, but I personally think you have to be a bit more prepared for it in Portugal. Recently, when I walked through a high traffic cafe area in Porto that also had a park area where people were sitting, it seemed like well over 50% of the young people sitting around were smoking. It was a lot. And as someone who really doesn't like cigarette smoke, it deterred me from spending much time there or sitting down at any of the cafes. Now that's just my personal preference, but I don't think I've ever seen it to that degree in Spain. Relative to climate, Portugal has a Mediterranean climate with warm, dry summers and mild, wet winters. Spain has a more varied climate with hot, dry summers in the south and cooler, wetter winters in the north. Keep in mind that Spain is a much larger country than Portugal, so there may be more variation depending on where you are at. For Portugal, you can generally look at weather that is either north or south. Each country has claim to islands that you can visit, and personally, I can't wait to visit all of them. Like I said before, you'd be lucky to land in either country, and if you're like me, you'd look forward to spending time in both. I really believe a lot of things end up coming down to personal preference. There is nothing like spending time in a city to see how you feel about the vibe. Now, most of the things I listed in this video are my own personal observations. If you've had other observations about differences between Portugal and Spain, I'd love to hear them. And if you're from either country, I'd love to hear your thoughts and learn from you as well. Like I said before, I love both of these countries dearly and can't wait to spend more time exploring what they have to offer. Do me a favor, like this video, and subscribe to join me every day where travel and adventure build financial freedom. I can't wait to see where your dreams will take you.